we'll do introductions of the team in a minute, but it feels weird to start talking at you and not tell you who I am. So my name is Elizabeth Maxwell. I'm the prevention supervisor for Lane County Public Health, and I am the lead on this incident command, and we'll give you some information about all of that here in a minute. But first of all, just want to thank you for coming to this meeting. We know that it's short notice, but we've got this issue and we wanted to talk to you all as soon as we could. Suicide prevention is everybody's business, and we're honored and grateful to have engaged the community to work through this together. We want to start by setting the intention and purpose of this meeting. Our goal is to give our Lane County schools more information about the alert we issued earlier this week and last week regarding the increase in youth suicide in Lane County over the last few weeks. Our hope is that you leave this meeting with more information about the situation and the reason for the alert, clarity on the role and the people serving on the incident command team, an understanding of what you can do as an important part of the collective suicide prevention efforts, the resources available to you as you lead this work in your school communities, and knowledge about what work is already underway. We also hope to be able to gain a sense from you about what other supports and resources might be needed in the schools as we work towards fostering wellness in our communities. While we will be offering information broadly about the recent increase of youth suicide in our community, we will not be releasing any information about specific cases. And so there will be a Q&A time at the end, but we're not able to answer questions about specifics. Lastly, this meeting is for Lane County schools. So if any members of the media have wandered in by mistake, we ask that you please contact Lane County's Public Information Officer, Jason Davis, and his email is right there. And I think he's on with us today as well. So now we can go, next slide, please. Introductions. I already told you, Elizabeth Maxwell, she, her, my pronouns, and Jill Baker. I've got two other people with me today, and Jill Baker is the Youth Suicide Prevention Coordinator with Oregon Health Authority. She also uses she, her pronouns. And then I've got Marissa Lovell, is our school-based promotion coordinator with Lane County Public Health. She works on the prevention team with me when we're not doing this. She also uses she, her pronouns. And we've got several other members of the team that we will name for you on a slide a little bit later. Next slide, please. So just some housekeeping. So one thing, please hold questions until the end. We've got some information to give out to all of you. And so maybe if you have a question, maybe we'll answer it. And if not, there'll be time at the end. So just a few items. First, we ask that you all remain muted for the duration of the presentation. We're hoping to have about 40 minutes for Q&A at the end of the informational portion of the meeting. And you can put your questions in the chat, and we have a moderator, Tim, who will read those questions aloud when the Q&A portion begins. If there's a question that needs further clarification, we'll ask the person who posted the question to unmute and clarify or elaborate. We'll do our best to get through as many questions as we're able to in the time we have, keeping in mind that there could be questions that come up that we don't know the answers to. And if that happens, we will get back to people when we can. And we will also post a recording of this presentation to the Lane County Suicide Prevention website, and we'll make sure that you have all those details in that website address before this is over. And also, if we mention any support materials, those will also be on that website. And we will post everything by the end of the day tomorrow, March 18th. At the end of the informational portion of the meeting, you will also be given an opportunity to fill out a Google form to indicate areas in which your school or school district might need further resources. Jill, did I hit anything else I missed in housekeeping?
Don't think so.
Okay, I think next one is you.
All right. We just wanted to take a minute before we kind of dive in to be clear that this is a meeting, the topic of this meeting is youth suicide, and not just youth suicide in general, but tragedies that have impacted your community really recently. And so it's important to us to remember that while all of you and we hold lots of hats in our community and so much responsibility with our various lenses, that we are also humans, not robots. The topic of suicide always holds much potential for feelings of being activated. Most of us likely have a story of when suicide impacted a friend, a family member, a student, or ourselves personally. It's very likely that many of us in this room have personal connections to one or more of the folks that have been impacted by these recent deaths. If you notice that you're feeling activated at any point during this meeting, please permit yourself to go off camera and step away for a minute. This meeting is being recorded so that anything that you miss while you take care of yourself can be watched later. For me, when I'm feeling activated in this role of suicide prevention, taking a drink of water, taking several deep breaths, and allowing myself even 1 minute to go outside and feel the air and the sun on my face signals to my body and to my mind that I am not in danger, and it helps me regulate back out of fight or flight. Please do what you need to take care of yourself. Next slide, Elizabeth.
Got to remember to unmute. Okay, I'm unmuted. So we want to talk to you about why we have this public health concern. So we just wanted to give you some information describing why Lane County Public Health issued a public health emergency alert regarding the public health concern of an increase in youth suicide deaths. So just some background, youth suicide is consistently the second leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 24 in Oregon. Oregon has youth suicide rates above the national average, and Lane County youth suicide rates have typically been about 50% higher than the national average. The Lane County Prevention Team has tracked and flagged an increase in youth, and when we say youth, we define that as 24 years of age or younger in recent months. Over the past 5 months, 11 young people in this age group from Lane County have died by suicide. Lane County has typically experienced between 10 to 12 youth suicide deaths each year. So this increase in youth suicide deaths meets the CDC's definition of a suicide cluster. A suicide cluster means that there have been an unexpected number of deaths in our region over a given time frame. It's important to note that Lane County Public Health's analysis of these 11 deaths did not result in any evidence that suggests the deaths are linked. This is sometimes referred to as suicide contagion, and we do not have any evidence of suicide contagion at this time. However, given the number of youth suicide deaths over the past 5 weeks, all of these deaths are included in the overall total of the 11. Lane County Public Health declared a public health emergency and initiated an incident command structure to identify needs, coordinate support, and call upon the community for help in addressing this issue. Given the number of deaths that involve young people, 17 years and younger, schools and school communities are vital partners in our overall efforts, which is we've been hearing from you, and that's why we wanted to reach out to you all today. And next slide, please. Sorry, still me. So purpose of the incident command system. So that because of COVID, that actually might be familiar to some of you, whereas years ago, we would not have expected any of you to know that. So this is the same system that we've used to respond to COVID. And so when things like this happen, we use the same system. And so it's just a fancy term that provides an organized response to a public health emergency. And so it's just a framework that we use, and we abbreviate it ICS. And it's an expanded version of the normal response provided by the Suicide Prevention Program in public health when youth and adolescents die by suicide in Lane County. So we always do this, and we've just activated elevated response because of the cluster. So part of what we've done is we've identified specific staff to deal with the response. We've established objectives for how we want to deal with it. And we also, unfortunately, we have had this happen before. And so we reviewed past incident command systems that dealt with suicide clusters to see what could be improved. Next slide. So the incident command objectives, what we came up with is we're trying to work on creating safety and mental well-being for people affected and public health responders affected by the suicide cluster. Obviously, we want to control the spread. Part of the reason we're meeting with you all today. We have an ongoing conducting epidemiology and surveillance work just to make sure that we're tracking everything, identify any specifically exposed populations to see if we need to do any targeted outreach, and provide appropriate information. Again, part of what we're doing right now in this meeting. Next slide. And this is just some contact information. That slide will be shared. The slides will be shared with all of you, so you'll have all of these contact information. Roger Brubaker is our normal Lane County post-vention lead. He's out for a couple days, so that's why you've got the 3 of us. I already talked about Jill Baker, and she'll talk here in a minute. Introduced you to Marissa. Jacqueline Moreno is our community liaison, and Jason Davis is our PIO, and he's on as well. Next slide.
Wanted to take a minute to kind of explain the role of the Oregon Health Authority in supporting Lane County Public Health during this time. When a youth in Oregon dies by suicide, there are several mandated postvention response activities that are mandated through the law that local leaders are tasked to do, including identifying community needs. Your postvention response lead, Roger Brubaker in Lane County, coordinates services, and the local community is able to do the hard work of healing without state support many of the time. If the local postvention response lead, who is Roger, identifies more needs than the county or the school districts that have been impacted can provide supports for, the Oregon Health Authority has a program called Suicide Rapid Response. That program is available to come in and provide resources, staff time, other supports at no cost to your local community or to your schools. It's a limited duration program designed to support and reinforce communities after a youth suicide death when the local postvention response lead has expressed limited or fatigued resources. Later, I'm going to outline some of the resources and supports that our suicide prevention, suicide rapid response program has provided to several schools and districts in Lane County over the past few months so that you can hear more about what we have done. When Lane County Public Health issued the public health emergency alert, OHA offered to send a representative to serve on the incident command team, and that's the role I'm playing. I'm currently on site at Lane County Public Health and will continue to be available in a combination of on-site and virtually throughout the duration of the incident command structure. Lane County is leading the response and OHA is supporting your Lane County leaders. In Oregon, there's a strong and mighty network of suicide prevention champions. There are humans doing the work locally. OHA also supports a variety of statewide suicide prevention programs that we affectionately call Big River programming. In this time of increased risk for the youth of Lane County, it's essential to remain coordinated across programs and across available supports so that you all can do the hard work of caring for our young people. And that's one role that I'm seeking to play in this response, to coordinate the work and connect to our existing resources. Next slide. In 4 of the recent 11 deaths in Lane County, the Suicide Rapid Response Program was activated at the request of Lane County Public Health. We followed the lead of Roger Brubaker and the school leaders most impacted by the deaths to determine what supports were needed. Each response was and is unique, and the resources that the Suicide Rapid Response Program is providing to those schools differ depending on the school's needs, the strengths of that school community, and other factors. We have supported on-site care rooms, provided brief therapy for impacted students and staff, provided debriefing and processing support opportunities for staff, supported suicide risk assessments and safety planning, provided grief supports, hosted parent nights, just to name a few response activities. We continue to actively support several schools and school districts across Lane County. It's important to note that all of these resources and supports were in addition to a strong team of folks from Lane County that live and work and serve in your community. The Lane County ESD deployed kind, caring, and exceptionally competent humans to help. 4J's suicide prevention and tragedy response teams mobilized quickly to ensure that students and staff were being given resources. Leaders in 2 other smaller school communities stepped forward with courage and passion and care to help their students and staff heal from an unimaginable loss. It's important for me to have you know that there are a lot of really smart and passionate people doing good work in Lane County, and there's so much more work to be done. We need all hands on deck. Suicide prevention is everyone's business. Marissa's going to talk to you next about what we hope your schools will do to help reinforce the safety net for our youth.
Can you all hear me? Okay, great. On Monday, Lane County Public Health sent out the public health emergency alert to schools, along with some relevant resources to ensure that we're sharing accurate information. We knew that having the information and resources was needed in order for school leaders to make choices about how your school communities might increase protective factors and care for the needs of your students, staff, and families. We received a request for more tools and guidance for schools, and we hear this, and that's why we're doing this today. I'll take the next few minutes to talk about what we hope that schools will do knowing that you all are the experts of what your school and community needs. We are also here to help support you in this work and will highlight the available supports and resources. At the end of this presentation, we will post a link to a survey to gather information from you about what your school needs right now. For those who are not able to attend live, that link will also be emailed to the same group that received this meeting invitation, along with the toolkit that Jill will mention later. First, we are asking you that you help the overall efforts of suicide prevention by remaining calm. This situation is alarming and action needs to be taken, and that action needs to be done in a calm, thoughtful, and coordinated way. Part of the strategy of issuing the public health alert is so that folks can have accurate information in a time when much misinformation exists. Part of the risk of issuing such an alert is that it has great potential to cause feelings of chaos and panic. We are hoping that you can help us spread the message that hope is possible, help is available, and that we have many, many strengths, both individually, as school communities, and as a broader community in Lane County. Those messages are protective and they will help save lives. The only thing stronger than a risk factor is a protective factor. To that end, we are asking you to advertise those messages through whatever channels you have to parents, caring adults, community members, staff, and students. Promote wellness activities and resources. Highlight resources that you have available. Encourage your parents, students, and staff to reach out if they are having thoughts of suicide. We know that suicide thrives and can grow when it is kept in secret, but when suicidal thoughts are shared, they often begin to lose their power. We are asking that school leaders take time to read through your school district's Addie's Act plan. Every school district in Lane County self-reported to the Oregon Department of Education that they have developed a K-12 suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention plan. We are asking that you read through yours and think critically about, do staff in my school know about this plan? Do they understand their role? Are they equipped to fulfill their role? And where are there areas that we will need help, support, or resources in order to actually implement our plan? One of the resource options that you can request through the survey is consultation around your Addie's Act plan. The only thing stronger than a risk factor is a protective factor. So let's look for ways to build up those protective factors for our students and our families. What are protective factors? Connectedness, belonging, having a named, trusted adult, knowing that you're competent, and knowing that you're accepted. All those actions and characteristics in place will help ensure that our students and our staff are well. Building these for your students and staff looks unique to each school. What are the things that your school does to foster connectedness and a sense of community? Lean into these things. Encourage students and staff to intentionally identify what makes them strong when life is hard. If you have a Sources of Strength program at your school, support your peer leaders and adult advisors so that they can lead the way in a campaign of building community-wide strength and hope. There are many supports available to you from Lane County and through the statewide coordinators for Sources of Strength. The Sources of Strength statewide training team at Matchstick is available to help support and brainstorm peer leader meetings, activities and messaging campaigns, as well as provide mini grants for current Sources of Strength teams. Statewide trainers at Matchstick Consulting are also available to any school, whether they're implementing Sources of Strength or not, to provide assistance, support, and ideas for small group and school-wide activities that center hope, connect to help, and uplift individual and collective strengths. Lastly, please tell us directly when you see or hear a need for additional support in schools. And since I'm the school liaison, please reach out to me at the contact information that was listed. And I will turn it over to Jill.
Okay, thanks, Marissa. We've compiled a set of resources in a toolkit that will be available to all of you. That's going to come out in an email to the email list that we sent this meeting notice to, and it'll also be posted to the Lane County Suicide Prevention website by the end of the day tomorrow. That toolkit includes a sample letter that you can adjust as needed to send out to your parents and community. information about safe messaging when talking about suicide. That's incredibly important to make sure that we're sending out messages about resources and linking to help and hope rather than messages that might contribute to the chaos and panic that we mentioned earlier. The toolkit includes a resource list of countywide support options, information about warning signs and risk factors for suicide, and many other materials that we hope are helpful. You'll see some of the same materials that got sent out to the school with the alert, and we've added in some as we've heard from you all about what would be helpful. One of the things that we've heard as a part of the incident command structure is that parents and concerned community members are interested in receiving information about suicide prevention, what they can do to help to create safety for their young people, and resources that are available for those in need of those resources. The second resource that's listed here on the slide is an option, if you would like, to get support in hosting a community or parent-focused listening session. We can offer facilitators to join your school staff for an event like this. We can help recruit experts to speak about grief and loss or about mental health and wellness. We have the ability to provide these supports in person or virtually, depending on your school's needs. We can also provide an outlined agenda if you would like to host an opportunity like this in-house as well. We strongly recommend that if your school community hosts such an event, that it remains focused on hope and help and strength rather than sadness, shock, and trauma. Focusing on trauma can increase risk for those most at risk. I'm going to say that again, just because it's so core. Focusing on trauma can increase risk for those most at risk. Next slide. We've also ordered several items that your schools have access to if you're interested. Grief journals from the Dougie Center for youth ages 12 and over is one option. This resource guides teens through a grieving process after a death, including but not limited to a suicide death. If you'd like to order some of these journals, please indicate that on the SurveyMonkey that will soon be posted in the chat. There are many other options available through the Dougie Center bookstore as well. And if you see a resource that you'd like to order for your students or staff, in addition to that grief journal, including materials for younger students, please indicate that on the SurveyMonkey. One of the most practical strategies that parents and trusted adults can do to create safety for young people who might be experiencing thoughts of suicide is restricting access to lethal means. Suicide is episodic. It goes up and down, it ebbs and flows. And so anything that we can do to create a pause when someone is experiencing an intrusive thought about suicide is protective. We have several tangible items available related to safe storage of firearms and medication. Please also look into the toolkit that will be coming for more information about restricting access to lethal means, as well as access to alcohol and other substances in the home. We have financial support available through mini grants to support good ideas that you or your staff would like to include as a part of your plan to increase protective factors for your students and staff. I sound like a broken record. If you're interested in those, please indicate that on the SurveyMonkey to come. And lastly, we are available to help you think through any or all of this. If you'd like consultation, say so on the SurveyMonkey. Next slide. Okay. Let's take 2 really deep breaths. That was a lot. I mean it. We're breathing right now. Let's breathe in, letting our lungs feel the air, reach them. Release it slowly to just slow your mind and your body down for a second. Let's do it one more time. Encourage you to move your neck around and find the places and spaces that have tension holding, where your body is telling you that there's a lot happening. Just take a minute. One more really, really deep breath all together. Hold it in at the top if you can before you release it. I want to end this portion by saying this feels hard because it is hard. Nothing about this topic is easy, and there are no easy answers about what to do next. They simply don't exist. And It is also true that there are abundant reasons for hope here. You have a special set of humans. You have access to a lot of resources. You love and care about your community in a way that's easy to see. And we're here to help you. You're not alone. In fact, you can't do this alone. None of us can. That's the beauty and the pain of doing suicide postvention work. We need each other. So I just want to say thank you for being the type of human who shows up at a meeting like this, knowing that you have at least 673 other things that need your attention right now and are maybe knocking at your door. And so thank you for being here, for the good questions that you will now start putting in the chat, and that we will work through together as humans who care about the young people in Lane County. Timothy Hyder is going to be our moderator, and he'll help facilitate some of that Q&A. And so if there are questions that folks have, please indicate them in the chat now. Marissa's going to put the link to the SurveyMonkey in the chat. Or actually, do you want me to do that, Marissa, because you're running Zoom ops there? I'm going to put the link to the SurveyMonkey in the chat so that you can see through what resource options are available to request now. You'll also notice on that SurveyMonkey a piece about can somebody just contact me and walk me through these because that was too much. So that's an option at the end of that form too, to name that you just would like somebody to reach out and give you more support. Shanda's asking who should fill out the survey. The answer to that is if you're representing a school or a school district that could use additional resources that we named, that's who should fill out the survey. You'll notice on the survey that it lists out all of the resources that we named, as well as some others that we didn't go over today. I'll just offer also in the space, if you're not a Zoom chatter, if you'd rather unmute and ask your question, that's okay too. Lori's asking a question about the postvention training. So one of the resources that I named and is listed on the resource slide in this presentation is called the Big River Programming. One of those, and so that's a set of training options for you to access and utilize as you implement your Addie's Act plan. One of those trainings is the Connect Postvention training. It helps think through what are the community in your ecosystem, who are the people, what are the responses that that would be helpful to do in a postvention environment. And so the answer to that question is that we have a statewide infrastructure of those trainings that happen often, including train the trainers in your area. And so if you are interested in scheduling a training for Connect Postvention, Tim Glasscock is the statewide coordinator for that work, and I'll put his name and contact information in the chat. And actually, I'll ask Shanda to do that, please.
Thank you. There's also a question asking about a sample letter for their school district. How can they best access that?
Yeah, thanks, Jolene. The sample letter, so we've drafted a letter kind of outlining the alerts that Lane County Public Health put out and what parents and community members can do, and then built in kind of a template space for you to be able to plug in your school's availability and options. So that letter is going to be a part of the toolkit that will come in an email after this meeting and will be posted to the Lane County Suicide Prevention website by the end of the day tomorrow. So the email will come today. The link to the website will be tomorrow.
There's a question from Grace, who, by the way, says, thank you so much for your support for the adults in the community. There is asking about gatherings for parents. How many will there be? Where are they? That kind of thing. And are you contemplating any?
Yeah, so right now what we're doing is we're letting local school communities take the lead on initiating those. So in the directly impacted schools that have experienced a suicide death, that was given to the school leadership as options for support for that. And so depending on the school district availability and spring break and all the things, the cadence of when those are happening differ. And so there have been parent listening sessions in many communities around Lane County already, and there will be more to come. And one of the things that that is an option on the table for school leaders that are on this call or watching the recording later is support in hosting one of those. And so if you are hearing from parents or community members, it might be good to link them back to their school leadership to request such a support.
There's a question from as to whether this is related to the current fentanyl crisis, or is this cluster considered separate?
So I can take a pass at that, and Jill, you can chime in. So I don't have any, like I said, we're not going to talk about specific cases, and so because we have, even though it seems like a lot, there's still so few, we don't want to talk about any of the specifics because it could provide identification of individuals. What I will say is fentanyl is definitely an issue, and there are definitely times in our community and other communities where it's sometimes really hard to tell the difference between an overdose and a suicide death. And so our medical examiner is aware of that issue. Our child fatality review system is aware of that. And so we definitely are looking into that. So I would say in general, not speaking about these specific cases, but in general, I would say fentanyl is often a factor just in youth death in general. Jill, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's good. The other thing about why that matters is that suicide is one thing that's hard, and there are lots of things that are hard right now. And so you'll also be hearing upcoming stats that are released around statewide numbers and trends for suicide and youth suicide in Oregon. And overall in the state of Oregon, we're seeing a decreased trend of youth suicide and an increase in overdoses. And so all of it matters when we're having these conversations. And so all the more reason to lean into what are the protective factors when life gets hard, because we don't control that. When life gets hard, what are the strengths? What are the things that help keep us strong, both as adults helping our kids, but especially for our kids as they're navigating some of these things. I'm going to loop back to the sample letter and just make a differentiation real quick. That one of the things that's unique about the situation when a suicide cluster is happening in a community is that essentially your entire county is in a post-vention or after a suicide response. And so some of the best practices that are typically that we lean into in a post-vention environment become more complicated for us right now in Lane County. For example, often when a school or a school building has been impacted by a suicide death, we recommend not to do suicide prevention trainings for a period of time, because the most important thing is to grieve and to heal and to focus on making sure that we are identifying other students or staff at risk and linking them to resources. And that the more prevention and the policy pieces come later. And so that's different in this scenario. If you're representing a school or a school community that was more indirectly impacted, or that you don't have a long list of folks or students or staff that have a personal connection or impacts to one of these deaths in Lane County, that it might be appropriate for you at this time for your school to lean in hard to suicide prevention training. And so that's part of the complexity of when we're dealing with a cluster of suicides, that we want to move the work forward. But the most important thing is taking a minute and healing and identifying those that are most at risk and linking them to resources. The sample letter that I referenced is for schools indirectly impacted by the suicide cluster. The schools that have been directly impacted by a suicide death have gotten resources and sent out notices to parents already. A direct message around, can you talk about reasons why post-pandemic that suicide and self-harm might increase at this time? Thank you for that question. I think the best answer that's coming to my brain right now is that that we don't know the impact of the pandemic directly related to suicide. What we know is that the pandemic increased stress for a long period of time, changed all of our lives, changed what was normal, created 172 million transitions, which our brains don't like and feel stressed about. That there are pieces about adjusting to those, the increased, the needing to be able to change how we connect with people was hard. We know that. We have survey evidence from national and local surveys that Oregonians increased more stress during the pandemic. And the truth of the matter is, suicide is complex, that there is never one reason that somebody dies by suicide. And there's never one thing only that can create protection against suicide. All we can do, and the best thing that we can do, is look for ways to increase protective factors and mitigate risk factors. And the best protective factors involve human connection. And so what are the things that we can do to increase a meaningful relationship? Family supports, peer supports, adult mentors, coaches. What are the things that we can do to increase belongingness and connectedness? And that's the best suicide prevention that we can do. And humans can withstand a lot of stress in a lot of scenarios with that safety net in place. The question about how to access the Survey Monkey, did folks get that link? If that didn't come through or you need more supports, our emails are in the presentation as well. Please reach out and we'll help you fill that out. Any other questions that folks have?
Do you mind if I just ask a question this way? Okay. I was the one who inquired about the letter to send out to our parents and community. So forgive me that I haven't read it yet or seen it, but in that, would there also be something that would be like a quick access link or website referred to so that parents who are concerned have this is where I need to go. Okay, I'm seeing this in my kid, and local resource, not just phone numbers, which I'm not saying that those are bad, but I'm saying in some cases I'm in a rural area. And I feel sometimes when I work with kids or parents, I feel when they leave here, I don't always know if they're getting what they need. And I know that we're in the midst of crisis. And so that's just sometimes, unfortunately, kind of how we're feeling right now. But sometimes even when I give the information and I do all those things, I still don't feel maybe parents have accessible, live, current, I can go here and get my kid help. In that letter, that's, I feel what I need to know is in there too,
So in the letter, we mapped out Lane County resources, so Lane County more broadly. And so Jolene, I don't know if that will meet your need or not, but we're certainly, let's maybe connect and make sure that you're getting what you need. Would you mind putting your email, either direct message to Marissa or myself, in the chat?
And I'll just add to the resource list that we'll share out is separated out by region. So hopefully that will help schools identify the closest options for them in the county. So I'll make sure that you all get that updated list that's kind of categorized by where folks are.
Okay. We'll hang out here for a couple more minutes just to make sure that you have your questions answered. Marissa, I forget what our next slide is. Oh, so I think we've answered the questions live. We'll compile those and send those out as well. Recording of this information session is going to be posted, like I said, to the website that is on the next slide. So in case you're wondering where is this elusive website, it's there. And then if there are any media inquiries, please direct them to Jason Davis, and his email address is there as well. Next slide. And so these are the three pieces that will be available if you're watching this recording after the live event. The materials we've posted on that website. There's a link to the suicide prevention Big River programming that were mentioned around some training programs that are available for your staff if that's appropriate for you to do at this time. Remember, the most important thing for you to do right now is increase protective factors, belongingness, and connection. And so if your brain is trying to figure out what's the next right thing, that's the next right thing to do. And we'll schedule your trainings and help you do that as well later. And then the SurveyMonkey to request supports and resources, some of those tangible items that I mentioned, as well as consultation if that's helpful to you. Elizabeth, Marissa, and I'll hang out here for a bit, but otherwise this concludes the recorded portion of our meeting. Thank you so much for being here and for the kind of work that you're doing to create wellness for our kids. Be well.